Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Chairman, governors, directors, observers, guests, ladies and gentlemen. One of my responsibilities as we come to the end of our annual meeting is to deliver closing remarks. After much preparation time and a relentless pace of meetings and interfacing during the past few days, Chairman, one would expect to see signs of mental fatigue and physical stress from governors, directors, and staff. But in keeping with the overarching theme of our meeting, I have observed nothing but resilience from every one of you. Indeed, Chair, there has been a pervasive mood of constructive discussion, general satisfaction with the work of the bank, and a desire to work collaboratively to find solutions to the challenges facing our region. I am not certain, sir, whether the generally upbeat move of everyone I have met here this week is attributable to the spiciness of this island to which our chairman frequently referred, or whether we have been flirting with that deadly white rum which the Grenadians love. Whatever the cause, governors, the mood has been infectious and much appreciated by all. Engaging with governors annually provides an opportunity for you to share your thoughts and perspectives on Caribbean growth and development, and for us to do likewise. This year, the clarity of your views on some of the key challenges facing our region and on some of the important opportunities that can be realized are worthy of note. In a real sense, these annual meetings both energize and inspire what we do to enhance the livelihoods of Caribbean people and to enhance the global agenda to end abject poverty. Chairman, there was a fair degree of commonality in the messages that permeated governors' statements during this meeting. I wish to draw your attention this morning to just a few of those messages that go to the heart of the strategic actions that our borrowing member countries and the Caribbean Development Bank should pursue to safeguard our collective futures. Almost all governors adverted to the scale of the disasters that visited our shores in 2017, disrupting lives and livelihoods in several member countries. Mainstreaming resilience needs to become a way of doing business for the Caribbean. All that we do must embody the principles of disaster risk management and climate change adaptation. The bank has sought to mainstream climate action in all of our interventions. Environmental impact assessments and climate vulnerability analyses have become standard requirements for CDB finance projects. And we have embraced the principle of building back better. Importantly, inclusivity is the hallmark of our work in our borrowing member countries. This is how we ensure that the needs of our most vulnerable groups, the women, the elderly, and the youth, are adequately taken into consideration. Addressing the issue of building social resilience and providing for the psychosocial needs of affected persons are also key if we are to transform our economies. Professor Mark Pelling, the distinguished speaker at our 19th annual William G. DeMass Memorial Lecture, reinforced this view during his presentation earlier this week. He cited psychosocial support as one of the 6 needs articulated by survivors of natural hazards. I am pleased to report that in March 2018, CDB's board approved a technical assistance grant to the Pan American Health Organization that specifically addresses the psychosocial needs of persons in the aftermath of a devastating natural hazard event. Mr. Chairman, A few governors touched on the issue of economic output concentration, which has long exposed Caribbean countries to the vagaries of natural hazards and global economic shocks. To diversify our economies, we must seek out opportunities to sustainably utilize the resources at our disposal. We must think of ourselves not as small island developing states, but as big ocean developing states. The sea holds tremendous potential for diversity. The prospects would be even greater if we were to adopt a regional approach to harnessing these resources in a responsible and environmentally friendly manner. Through our ongoing research work, CDB hopes to advance the knowledge and intellectual discourse on the blue economy. Governors also alluded to the fact that smart partnerships must be leveraged in the furtherance of the bank's work and development objectives of its borrowing members. Chairman, we endorse this viewpoint. Indeed, close collaboration with other development partners has been a staple of CDB's assistance. In 2017, for example, we collaborated with the World Bank to provide assistance to Haiti for basic education and with the International Fund for Agricultural Development to support climate-smart agriculture right here in beautiful Grenada. We partnered with the United Kingdom to provide assistance to the overseas territories. We have also forged relationships with agencies like the European Investment Bank and Agence Française de Développement, and with countries like Mexico and the UK that are channeling resources through CDB in order to build resilience in beneficiary countries. Many governors complimented the bank for its key role in several areas that have the potential to change the development trajectory of small states in the Caribbean. They cited our work in pushing the renewable energy efficiency agenda to boost competitiveness and promote sustainable livelihoods. Our role in strengthening governance systems through appropriate regulatory reforms, and the high priority we are giving to generating knowledge products in some key structural areas of regional importance, including regional aviation and the blue economy. Chair, these constitute the core fabric of the franchise value of our institution and its usefulness to its members. We do not intend to rest on our laurels. The presence of poverty, the differential development outcomes for women and men, and the difference in economic opportunities for the differently able in our region suggests that there is a substantial volume of development work yet to be pursued. Armed with purpose and vigor, we tend to be relentless in our pursuit of improved livelihoods for ordinary Caribbean people. In 2018, the bank approved an intervention to support the conduct of disability assessments in some BMCs, consistent with the Special Development Fund's theme of leaving no one behind. However, CDB needs access to adequate levels of concessional resources to be able to offer meaningful support for the high volume of development work that remains outstanding. Recognizing the existing structural gap in the Special Development Fund and the increasing demand for such resources, mainly in the face of natural hazards, I am urging governors to give due consideration to possible additional contributions to close the structural gap in the program. During this annual meeting, management deepened its engagement with governors and directors on the issue of the nexus between capital and risk and the possibility of a widened membership in CDB as an appropriate strategic response. One of our roles as a proactive and responsible management is to scan that horizon for potential threats that could harm CDB as well as our borrowing constituents, and to advance appropriate responses for your consideration. We have always sought to do this in an honest and frank way. Proposed changes to the regulatory environment that may further penalize our countries and the bank simply because of our geographical location are real threats that simply cannot be ignored. I therefore urge countries to move with alacrity to create the necessary buffers and employ available risk transfer vehicles to boost resilience and limit exposure to harm. Beyond that, we cannot discount the expansion of membership as a strategic consideration in diversifying our lending portfolio, and in so doing, safeguarding the franchise value of CDB to current borrowing members. We are very pleased with the support we got from many governors in moving this process forward. We give you the assurance, governors, that the detailed work that you have requested will be transmitted to you in the shortest possible time. Chairman, we have come to the end of the 40th annual meeting of CDB's Board of Governors. I want to say thank you, Chairman, for your gracious hospitality. I want also to extend gratitude to your entire team for making this annual meeting the resounding success that it has been. When we leave this island over the next few days, I assure you, sir, we will be taking with us the embodiment of your warmth and the durability of Grenada's resolve. To our governors, to our directors, delegates and staff, travel safely home, and let us plan to meet again next year for the 49th annual meeting. Mr. Chairman, I thank you, sir.
Certainly, I'd like to thank the Chairman for his very insightful closing remarks, and therefore, I take this opportunity to deliver mine. Premier, it's good to see you here still. It's nice to have you, and of course, as governor, and of course, governors of the bank, our distinguished president, members of the board of directors, vice presidents, and staff of CDB, delegates and guests, ladies and gentlemen, sisters and brothers all. In my view, the past 4 days have been extremely productive. Through the caucus of governors, the meetings and seminars, we have engaged consistently in constructive and thought-provoking discussions and valuable networking. And this morning is certainly an example of this, where we had 2 thought-provoking suggestions and proposals from the Caribbean Development Bank. And I think we all are better off for the thorough discussions that took place during that particular session. Importantly, we have been seeing solutions and we have seen results in many of our deliberations. Anchored on the collective resolve of the members of this institution, the bank is re-energized to support the region's journey towards a more resilient and prosperous Caribbean. Several useful insights have been distilled from our discussions over the last 4 days. I trust that we'll use these insights to inform climate-smart solutions as we forge ahead to build resilience in all of its forms. The 19th William Dimas Memorial Lecture addressed important issues of institutions and social relationships that shape vulnerability and adaptivity towards natural disasters. In my opening remarks on Wednesday, I underscored the interconnected relationship between vulnerability and resilience. We also learned a great deal from the three seminars. Importantly, the seminar on financing of the blue economy explored ocean solutions, as well as highlighted inventive financing mechanisms to support the transition to the blue economy. The Air Transport Competitiveness and Connectivity Seminar reiterated the urgent need for sustainable policies to improve the regional aviation industry, to foster true integration and the freedom of movement, while a seminar on building resilient cities explored options for building urban resilience within the region. Here in Grenada, we hope to be out front in this very crucial area. Colleagues, we do not have the luxury of having research done that does not translate into meaningful policies and actions to build resilience. Remember, I did indicate that we're not here to talk and talk, but to act. I therefore encourage my brother President Smith and his staff to develop an action agenda that takes on board the relevant policy recommendations emanating from all these three seminars for discussions and approval at the level of heads of government of CARICOM. In closing, I want to remind you that our Caribbean history is one of struggle and triumph. Our foreparents and the generations that followed up until this present day have had to be resilient in many forms. In other words, resilience existed a long time ago. Resilience is etched in our DNAs, and as such, innately, we as a Caribbean people have the basics of what is required to push ahead in a sustainable way. Therefore, with our own resolve and inherent inclination for triumph, coupled with climate-smart, sustainable developmental policies, adequate financing, and effective partnerships, we can be well on our way towards building a truly resilient and prosperous Caribbean region. As we can tell from Mother Nature's revolt, time, my dear sisters and brothers, is not on our side. Therefore, let us move with haste and put the necessary measures and policies in place and do the required work to secure the future for this one Caribbean. Sisters and brothers all, on behalf of the government and people of this beautiful country, of Grenada, CARICOM, Peter Martinique, let me take this opportunity to extend our heartfelt thanks to the staff of the Caribbean Development Bank, both those remotely and those present here, for all the support given in organizing this year's successful meeting. I would also like to extend, as the President did, special thanks to the members of the organizing team locally who worked tirelessly to make this year's event a success. I saw them up to last night and I had to ask them, "You still here?" Staff of the Ministry of Finance, staff members of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Tourism and Culture and Health, as well as members of the Royal Grenada Police Force, the Grenada Information Service, the management and staff of the Grenada Trade Center. You have all done your country well. I encourage all of you, our visitors, to continue to enjoy, with certain limitations, the rest of your time here. We have rules in our society, just remember this. And come and come and come back again. I extend to you, those who like to enjoy themselves in special ways. We have something called Spice Mass, which culminates on August 13th and 14th this year. Leave a space in your calendar for this. We bid you farewell at this time. We look forward to you coming back again. I am sure that having been here and having tasted the spice, you all would be better off when you return to your home, to your country and your family as much better men and women. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Colleagues, I'm not finished yet. I cannot miss recognizing the presence of the Governor of Trinidad and Tobago, who, of course, has been very close, almost swimming distance from Grenada, to give an appreciation.
Thank you very kindly, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, the esteemed Prime Minister of Grenada, Carriacou and Petite Martinique, distinguished President of the CDB, staff of the CDB, directors, fellow governors, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Board of Governors, I take this opportunity to express our appreciation in this resolution for the kind hospitality of the government and people of Grenada on the occasion of the 48th annual meeting held at the Grenada Trade Center, St. George's, Grenada. Mr. Chairman, Mr. President, thank you on behalf of my fellow governors. Thank you very kindly.
As usual, Trinidad is short and sweet. Colleagues, at next item, I have here I think some special presentation of computers. Mr. Kahneman. Two of us.
Greetings, resilient governors and all other delegates. As is customary, we do not only come and enjoy the spice of the country that we visit, we also leave something tangible. And we're donating computers to Grenada, and we are providing them to the Ministry of Education for use in their program to assist children with special needs. As a matter of fact, they've recently had activities to observe and to celebrate the children with special needs, and we give them these computers for their use in pushing forward that work. And we have the Permanent Secretary from the Ministry of Education here with us this morning to collect and to distribute. As you can see on the screen, should come up shortly, some of the schools that would benefit from the presentation this morning. The computers, one of the computers right there on the table behind you, President and Prime Minister. There you go. Just an indication of what will be handed over. And if we can have a handshake and use them well. Of course, there will be 9 computers donated by the Caribbean Development Bank, and we'd like to thank Ms. Jacinta Joseph, the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Education, for coming forward and collecting. And we assure you that they will be handed over. Never mind, she left a little empty-handed. Don't be disappointed. They will be handed over. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, my brother. Well, I just have the last thing to do, and something I never like doing, closing anything that I enjoy. But I do have no choice in this matter, so I take this opportunity to declare the 48th meeting of the Board of Governors of the Caribbean Development Bank, without a gavel, closed. Thank you all. George. As usual, we have little housekeeping matters to complete, my brother.
Thank you, Chair. Tomorrow, delegates will have the option of two tours, a land tour and a cruise and tour of the underwater park. We're asking that all delegates that you register at the registration desk in the lobby of the Radisson Hotel. Please register so that we can know the numbers in order to cater for that event. The departures, delegates who are traveling to destinations within the region are asked to be in the lobby of the hotel 1.5 hours before the departure time. And those whose destinations are extra-regional are asked to be in the lobby 2.5 hours before the departure time. Subsistence claims forms. Those governors and directors who have not submitted their forms already are please asked to do so at the registration desk in the lobby of the Radisson Hotel. The media, you're reminded to remain in the room for the President's news conference. We will be having lunch today in the usual place in the annex, and this lunch is sponsored by the Republic Bank, and that's 1:30. But when we leave here, I think we can speed it up and go immediately to lunch. Thank you, Chair.
I just only want to point out we had distinguished guests from the Kuwaiti Fund and the OPEC Fund who have been here with us, who have done valuable work for Grenada, and they will be also presenting at the post-press conference of the President a special reward to the country of Grenada, CARICOM, Martinique. Just want you to recognize them for what they have done for Grenada Car Company Marketing. Thank you, my brothers, and we look forward to the presentation. Thank you. conference of the president of the Caribbean Development Bank. I just happen to be sitting here accompanying him. So this is not my press conference. That is the boss of the Caribbean Development Bank. So, Mr. Warren.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the media. It's great to have you here. Thank you very much for your presence. Just remember, notwithstanding what the president said, the prime minister said, any of the tough questions we'll direct to him.
Hello? Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Laura Dowridge Phillips. I'm from Loop. Yesterday at the seminar on air transport, connectivity, and competitiveness, a suggestion was made that the CDB play a role in bringing regional leaders together to get a firm commitment on LIAT. Could you respond to that, please?
Yes, thank you very much for the question. The CDB recognizes, as I indicated in my statement to governors yesterday, that this issue of regional aviation is really core to our ability to grow our economies in a sustainable way. In many respects, LIAT is kind of like a highway in the skies. We happen to be an archipelago, which means several different islands that are connected by the sea. And whereas sea transport is important, it is only a complement to, not a substitute for, aviation. So we at the Caribbean Development Bank have been supporting LIAT for many, many years. And we recognize the critical role that this institution plays. For too long, LIAT has been in a situation where it's pretty much limping along, providing pretty poor service and inadequate connectivity to the rest of the region. So that we at the Caribbean Development Bank, being a development institution, we don't have the luxury of sitting on the sidelines and allowing this situation to continue. We have no intention of leading the process. The airline belongs to the government and people of the region. The role we want to play is to help the governments, in the first instance, the shareholder governments, to galvanize action to fix the problems that exist in LIAT. Those problems are both internal to the airline and also in the external environment. By the external environment, I mean, of course, the way in which the airports operate to facilitate or otherwise the movement of passengers through their processes. The other aspect to it is the type of taxation that is imposed on the airlines, which affects their ability to maximize their loads. So these are some of the things that need to get done. What we will do, well, what we have done up to this point is we have provided financing to get the evidence, because this thing has to be, the recovery has to be based on hard, cold evidence. It can't be based on individuals' views of what is the core of the problem. So those studies have been done, two of them. One of them has been presented here, and I have shared some of the findings of the other study, which is not yet public. So the role we will be playing is to provide some technical assistance to LIAT so that they can bring on board the skills that will help them to prepare the case for the discussions with the shareholders, the existing shareholders, and hopefully prepare the ground for a discussion with potential new shareholders that would come on board. So that's the role that CDB intends to play in a nutshell.
Nicola Barito, ABS Television, ABS Radio. President Smith, of course, I know you will answer this one, but I would also like the Prime Minister to give some feedback as well. 2017 saw the word resilience being used left, right, and center. Everything and everyone was resilient. Given the catastrophic, unfortunate events that took place, we now have to rise to the occasion. Professor Pelling actually broke it down for us in terms of the many layers of resilience, and social resilience, of course, came to the fore. How is the CDB now going to utilize social resilience in terms of development and, of course, disaster risk management, and also, coupled with that, building back better and bigger? And Prime Minister, I'm sure you could probably answer a little bit based on the events that took place in 2004.
Let me just respond briefly to the question of social resilience. We have just recently approved a technical assistance relating to the issue of social resilience. You might say that we have come to the party a little bit late on that, but I remember last year when your Prime Minister was carrying the ball, so to speak, on the post-disaster issues to the world, so to speak, because the leaders of those countries also did a very effective job in letting the rest of the world and the region understand the crisis that they faced as a consequence of the hurricanes. The Prime Minister, I was in a meeting with him, and he raised this issue of the impact that natural disasters have on the psyche of the victims, so to speak, and the need for us to not only address the fallout in the physical environment, but also to have the wherewithal to address the fallout in the social dimension. So that I think we owe your Prime Minister a debt of gratitude for leading on that point. He certainly educated me. I was not an expert in that area, but he lived it, you see, and I remember seeing him back then when he was going through this trauma. So we want to be as comprehensive as we possibly can in addressing resilience, and we're more than happy to be educated and to learn of the different dimensions associated with building resilience in our countries. So social resilience is one that we have to give much greater attention to. Thank you.
President, I love to have a Grenadian. She happened to be Antiguan. You're welcome. Since you have been given the title as having me as your Prime Minister, you don't have to leave, my dear. But just let me see this. You know, when we had the issue of Ivan in 2004, we went through a lot. It was not just physical, as you quite rightly pointed out. It was a lot to do with psychological, the damage that was done. And maybe to some extent, I was chairman of CARICOM last year when we had Irma and Maria. And as I went through the entire Caribbean islands that were affected, including your own country, something came over me and said, you know, there must be a reason why you were chairman at the time, because you went through it all. So I could have felt every aspect of the pain that I saw at that particular time. And therefore, we know that the bank's initiative in those areas, dealing with the social problems, the psychological problems, and the physical one, was certainly necessary at this particular time, given the devastation. And that's why we have no apologies to make for those who do not seem to understand what it is when people have to go through this and have to feel that pain and the problems that come out of it. And the fact that you cannot define people, a country, as being economically successful, therefore they can't access concessional funding. So for doing well, you have been victimized, and not forgetting that they are in a vulnerable area where the vulnerability index was not in fact being calculated in that equation. So we really feel strongly about that, and that's why we will continue as a region. And of course, as chairman of Small States, Grenada has been taking the lead in articulating that position. And I think to some extent we've seen the results of that.
Good afternoon. My question has to do with one of the presentations that was given this morning, or the presentation on blue financing. And the presenter used some examples of how financing can be available. And these include climate funds, blue bonds, debt swap, and a couple others. What's the bank, my question is really to the President, what's the bank view on debt swapping in any of its formats?
Well, the debt swap is a technique that has been under discussion for some time. And as you know, many of our Caribbean countries are heavily indebted, so that many different mechanisms have been explored for trying to mitigate that situation. Now, the details of how you would go about a blue bond or a debt swap in relation to the blue economy is something that I personally am not familiar with. But I imagine that it would have similar dimensions to what is required in relation to a debt swap generally. What it requires is that you have two parties, one that is willing to forgive the debt, so to speak, in relation for other things being done on the other side of the equation. So it's a complicated issue, but I think that the main point here is that for us to be able to develop the blue economy, it's not dissimilar to the efforts that we'd have to make in relation to responding to climate change. You need to have resources that are, quote unquote, appropriately priced to induce countries to get involved in this type of development. There's no question about it that the blue economy is a big opportunity for us. I think that if you think about it, we have more square footage in the sea than we have on terra firma as island states. And the resources that are in the sea are almost unlimited. So that there's an opportunity for us to start to exploit those resources in a way that can first diversify our economies and also build the diversity of job opportunities and livelihoods for our people. At this stage, what the CDB has done, it has tried to join with others in developing the business case, if you will, for pursuing this as another avenue of development for our countries. And that is what we intend to continue to do as we go forward, try to identify other opportunities for the diversification of our economies.
Mr. Mitchell, do you have a view on debt swapping?
Sorry?
The Prime Minister was asking if
No,
you have a view
I
on
think
debt
the
swapping.
President has done an excellent job. And while he said he's not that familiar, he gave a proper explanation of what the debt swap is all about.
Sherry and Noel, Government Information Service. My question has to do with the issue of travel. Reduction in cost of travel throughout the region. If shareholder governments are to succeed in this aspect, do you believe it will mean an increase in intra-regional travel? And if not, what will the shareholder governments have to do in order to stimulate that travel amongst the region?
Well, the stimulants are manifold in the sense that you have to make it more user-friendly, so to speak, for people to transit from one part of the region to another. Meaning the airports have to be configured in such a way that you can move seamlessly through one airport in order to board a flight to get to another. That is one of the things that would help to stimulate travel in the region. It's no different from any other kind of business. So that's one aspect of it. The other aspect has got to do with the quality of the service that's provided by the carrier itself. In this case, let's call it what it is. It's LIAT. So there are things that need to happen in LIAT that would induce people to want to travel. If you think about it, you have a weekend vacation and a long weekend vacation, and you want to go from Grenada to Trinidad, say, and you go to get your flight, and the flight is delayed for several hours, it affects your ability to enjoy that weekend. So you're going to be very cautious about spending your money up front if you are not in a position to be able to get the maximum out of it. So that the governments themselves have a role in facilitating the increase in travel. The aspect that we have identified as one of the most critical has to do with the cost of travel. Now, if you look at your airline coupon, because you don't have tickets anymore, the receipt, if so to speak, in some instances you will see the build-up of what is the fare, what LIAT gets, that is, and the various taxes that you pay in order to be able to go on a flight. And what you'll see is that taxes and other imposts represent a substantial portion of the bill, of the cost of that journey. And it varies from one route to another. So that what we are arguing is that if aviation is anything like some other products, it's price sensitive, it's price elastic, as the economists would like to call it. So that what we are saying is that if you want to stimulate travel, one of the things you have to do is to make it cost effective for people to be able to travel. One of the issues that we are very, very cognizant of, and which the governments themselves appreciate perhaps even more than we do, is that the taxes that they're currently getting, they need them to run their countries. So to have a resolution of the matter, you can't say to Prime Minister Mitchell here that he must give up his aviation taxes and he not have some comfort that he's going to be able to replace those government revenues in some way. So it has to be a well thought out and well constructed response to this challenge. But in my humble view, and I think the studies that CDB has financed have supported the position that aviation generally is price sensitive. And there was a study that was done by IATA, which confirmed that in other parts of the world. So what we are arguing is that, you know, if you reduce the taxation, you should get a certain response, depending on, and the extent of the response is a function of how much you reduce the taxation. But at the end of the day, if it does in fact stimulate the traffic, what you will find is that when those people come to your country, for example, that they'll want to spend here in Grenada. Even if they were to stay with a family or a friend, in all likelihood, you have so many beautiful attractions here in this country, including the food, that you're going to want to spend some money. And the government is going to benefit from that expenditure. So it's what economists refer to as the multiplier effect of that, which hopefully would replace the lost revenue. Prime Minister, you like?
The studies have shown that there's no if and but about it, that reducing the taxes at a regional level, not a single country doing it by themselves, because it won't make sense. All that would happen, that country will just lose revenue. But if we collectively reduce the taxes and we make tickets far cheaper, you would find that you would encourage people within the region to travel a lot more within the region. And the government, in our view, based on all the studies that have been done, which will show that while we will get less revenue on one ticket, there would be a multiple increase in the number of persons that are in fact traveling within the region. And the governments in the end will gain more revenue. Not only that, the government gets revenue from the hotel occupancy tax and other services in the country, as the president mentioned. So there are indirect taxes that the government will earn with the more persons in the country. So we are confident that what we will be seeing is an increase in revenue for the government of the country and not less revenue. In fact, I think it's penny wise, pound foolish to continue with the high taxation that we have in the region. We are hurting the small hotel industry in a very serious way, because Caribbean people generally will tend to travel and access their services to the smaller, probably less expensive hotels in the region, which are the ones that suffer a lot in the off-season, in the off-tourism season. So I think there's no doubt in my mind that you won't have to get additional revenue from another tax. You will see it directly from the same increased travel in the region.
My final question to the President. I just want to go back to your opening remarks where you commended the government of Grenada in terms of its homegrown structural adjustment program and the Citizen by Investment program. We've been hearing some negatives as it relates to the Citizen by Investment program, but for you to come and commend the government on that initiative, I would just like to have your view as to how important you see such a program in terms of helping building in terms of the economy, the Citizen by Investment program.
Well, if you just look at the revenues that the governments that have introduced this new source of funding, if you just look at those revenues, I think you'll see that they are substantial. Where the issues, the controversy has developed around citizenship by investment is the ability of small countries to be able to manage that business in such a way that it doesn't create other problems for them. Let me be a little bit more specific. Some of the Caribbean countries have run into difficulties because they have provided citizenship for individuals who, it turns out, are less than desirable citizens. And they get a passport from that country, which allows them to go without a visa to, countries like Canada and what have you. That damages the reputation of that citizenship by investment program in that country. And there can be sanctions and reversals for the country as a consequence. So what I'm saying in a nutshell is citizenship by investment is a very respectable and widely used form of generating revenue for countries. Nearly all of the large countries in the world, and I'm speaking here of the United States, Canada, the UK, you name them, they have it. Citizenship by investment. And so there's no reason on the face of it for small Caribbean countries to not pursue that avenue as a source of revenue. The challenge is to ensure that you have the wherewithal to do the due diligence on the applicants so that you don't have the negative fallout that I spoke to. What I particularly like about the Grenada approach is that Grenada is treating it, I guess, in part like a windfall. It has elements of what they refer to as heritage funds and things of this nature. Whereas countries that are in the commodity business, oil, agricultural products, and they find themselves in a situation where the market situation is such that they get a wash of resources at a particular point in time. They don't just go on a spending binge. What they do is they set it aside for the rainy day, so to speak. Trinidad and Tobago has done it with oil and gas, for example. So that's my understanding of the kind of thinking that has gone on here in Grenada. That you get this funding, you don't know whether how long this thing is going to last, but you make hay while the sun shines, so to speak. So you set aside a portion of it to give you a buffer against unforeseeable events like natural disasters. I don't know, Prime Minister, whether I have mischaracterized your citizenship by investment program, but that to me is how they typically work.
Just to add, the President is correct that many of the developed countries do have a citizenship by investment program. And I think the real problem is that people are concerned about is the whole security apparatus in awarding citizenship to an individual person. Grenada has been defined as being slow in its approval. The reason is because we are thorough, that we prefer to get less revenue and a more security apparatus for the awarding of citizenship. And we believe by doing so, we have protected our country and at the same time have generated significant resources, which is being used and will be used to pay down the debt of the country, because part of the agreement with the international community throughout the structural adjustment program is 40% of the debt of the resources will go towards paying down the debt to the country. So it has to be in that particular area. And of course, we term a portion, a good significant portion of it as national transformation. So we have to invest it in transformational activities. And we make sure that it's precisely what you will see happening as far as our country is concerned. So you will see some initiative in the agricultural sector, transforming the agricultural sector. You see initiative in education, transforming the whole education system to ensuring that we have more skills development throughout the length and breadth of the country. In innovation, in the technology, in new economy type activities. So that's where you're going to see it. And we do not give a citizenship to anyone unless it passes through the regional security apparatus. I think that is one area that at a regional level we must come to terms with. We should not bypass the regional security apparatus, and we don't do it. And that's why we have not heard, in Grenada's case, any person, despite the propaganda that some use it, because they're concerned about our generation of significant resources. You have not heard anyone with any evidence that have been given citizenship that have not, in fact, passed through a rigorous security check.
Thank you, Dr. Mitchell. At this time, we have time for one more question. Raul?
Thank you, Raul Titus. Good morning, Prime Minister, President, afternoon. Mr. President, I noticed a lot of the examples you give in your presentation. I can't help but notice you refer to Grenada quite consistently. But I just want to ask this particular question, though. given the Humpty Dumpty picture that exists in the Caribbean in terms of the economies, you have Grenada being seen as on the top in terms of what's happening in Grenada, i.e. the ports, i.e. the economy, and then you have Barbados, which is struggling. So you have like some doing well, some not doing well, based on the various reports. And put that in context of what is happening in the U.S., where President Trump is saying that the U.S. economy is on the up, on a jobs under 4%, 3 point something percent. What's your prognosis of the Caribbean's economy? Where are we going? I mean, what's your feeling for the Caribbean's economy against that background?
Well, I guess if you look at what's happening in the United States, if you look at the numbers, I don't think there's any question that there is an improvement in the U.S. economy. And that improvement has been taking place for some time. What you find now is that they're in a situation where the employment levels have perhaps been the best in quite a few years. But that process has been trending in that direction for some years now. Europe is doing better also. The United Kingdom is in a little bit of a difficult situation because of Brexit and the uncertainties surrounding how that project is going to play out in the end. But I think that generally one would have to conclude that we're in a better situation as far as the external environment of the Caribbean is concerned. And as you know, we are very heavily dependent on both trade and travel from those countries. Different countries are affected differently. In the Northern Caribbean, there's a very heavy dependence on tourism from the United States and Canada. In the Eastern Caribbean, Barbados, for example, is very heavily dependent on UK tourism. The Barbadians have a sort of a sweet spot when it comes to UK travelers. It has a good brand name in the United Kingdom. So I don't know that we can predict accurately what is going to happen. There's one of the concerns I have at the present time is the uncertainty around trading relationships. It seems to me that we're going through a very confusing and worrisome period. There is the strategy of the United States government is not entirely clear to me, but it is creating some uncertainty in the trading relationships that they have with countries in the Far East and also even parts of Europe, it appears. So we have that uncertainty even at the same time that we have a good story going on as far as the economic numbers are concerned in those countries. What I think we need to do is to focus on what we have control over. What do we have control over? We need to ensure that we manage our economies well, meaning that we should try to run fiscal balances at least, if not fiscal surpluses. We need to manage our debt so that we don't get into the situation where many of our countries are today and have been for some time, where our debt to GDP ratio is at levels that have a negative impact on growth. So that those are some of the things, in my view, that we have control over. What we need to also do is to do some of the things that we've been talking about this week in terms of resilience, building resilience against natural hazards, so that when those inevitably happen, we're not caught in a position where we have to go and borrow a lot of money in order to be able to respond. So that generally, we make prognoses about what is going to happen in this region. And I think earlier this year we had a press conference in which we pretty much concluded that we expected that 2018 was going to be a better year for the Caribbean region than 2017. I think to some extent that is probably still holding. But the jury is still out. You never know what can transpire.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, President. Thank you, members of the media.
Colleagues, we won't hold you back too much longer, but we have our distinguished representative from the Kuwaiti government through the Kuwaiti Fund, who, as I said before, has been very responsive to Grenada's developmental needs with tremendous amount of soft loan concessionary financing for the building of the infrastructure, specifically dealing with the feeder roads through agriculture and tourism activities. And they're here today to present an award to me specifically, but really to the people of Grenada, Carriacou, and Martinique, for the relationship we have developed over the last several years, recognizing that they had tremendous problems between 2008 and 2013, and recognizing as the government returned into office 2013, the whole relationship changed again, and the country benefited to scores of miles of road and development through the Kuwaiti Fund. So we'll ask our brother from the Kuwaiti Fund to come up and do your presentation.
Thank you, Honourable Dr. Mitchell. Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to be brief about our relation with Grenada. This relation goes to a long time ago, and especially with Dr. Mitchell, where he's done a lot of nice work, and we have a lot of problems, and he faced it and finished it, and we need to give him a word of excellence, and we thank him, because when we meet with Dr. Mitchell, we don't meet a prime minister. We meet one of the Grenada citizens, and he always put his citizens in front of everything. He think about them, he think about Grenada, he think about the region. Thank you, Dr. Mitchell, for everything. Thank you.
Thank you. You can tell them the significance of this.
This one is a tradition. This one is a traditional boat from Kuwait. This is specially designed. Only in Kuwait you will find it. We call it boom. We choose this one because this kind of boat is the faster and the most effectiveness with the country. Thank you.
Let me thank you on behalf of the government and people of Grenada, Carriacou, and Martinique, and to say, guys, based on our integrity legislation, this will be sitting at the Prime Minister's office, not at the home of the Prime Minister. So it will be left to the government and people of Grenada, Carriacou, and Martinique. Thank you, my brother. Thank you very much for this.
Thank you. If you allow me, I have a small gift for Mr. President.
Good. He has no integrity legislation.
So it's only a small gift of Kuwaiti traditional, Mr. President. This one traditional use it for coffee, and we drink with this one. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. This is a big and very pleasant surprise. And the Caribbean Development Bank will be delighted to put this on display.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
If you allow me to take a picture with my team with the Kuwait Fund.
You guys, you want to go down? We can come down and take a picture. Then you take care. We'll be in touch, right?
Okay.
And I'll be in Barbados soon. Guys. CDB. And that's right.